SVC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
One of global gaming's biggest M&A movers is back at it once more, as Allwyn International has reached an agreement to acquire leading US fantasy sports operator PrizePicks. The deal sees PrizePicks open North American B2C doors for Allwyn, which values its new venture at around $2.5 billion. PrizePicks will remain a standalone DFS operator, with Allwyn identifying opportunities to strengthen its proposition for the US lotteries market. But with DFS's future in California and the national status of prediction markets unclear, how can we really assess this move? Welcome back to iGaming Daily, supported by Optimove, the creator of positionless marketing and the #1 player engagement platform. Are you heading to G2E? Optimove is hosting an exclusive sweepstakes industry breakfast. Get market insights and hear from some of the top names in the industry. Find out more on this can't-miss event in the description for this episode. And joining me, Charlie Horner, today, well, we couldn't get anybody else for this one, could we? It's managing editor and editor of SBC America's Jessica Welman to bring us the US insights on this one. And for the European insights, it's SBC News editor Ted Orme-Claye. Jess, thanks for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm apparently making room in my calendar for this sweeps breakfast with Optimove. I'm going to have to ping them afterwards and see if I can come.
Yeah, well, make sure you get down into the show notes and you can find out all about it. Ted, how's it going? You're on the show again.
Yeah, so say back from Lisbon, hitting the ground running, 2 podcasts in a week, no rest for the wicked. Brilliant.
Well, this is an interesting story. And Jess, I must say that when we got confirmation of this, you were particularly pleased. Did you... You seem to have some sort of insider's track on this.
I can say I did. As I put on Twitter, worst kept secret in US gaming finally out. I think all of us have known. I feel like all of us have known about this for several weeks now, and we've known that a sale was coming for several months now with PrizePicks. So mostly just happy that I don't have to do the song and dance around it in our coverage of trying to hint at it without saying it out loud.
Nice. Well, Ted, could you perhaps kick us off properly by just outlining what this deal entails? What is the transaction and who takes what?
So, yeah, the basic details. Allwyn has paid $1.6 billion to acquire, I believe it's 62.3% of PrizePicks, which, as you said earlier, Charlie, is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, but not quite sure entirely, daily fantasy sports operators in the US. That is in of itself obviously a huge market. The deal values PrizePicks at $2.5 billion, and there is also the potential for that valuation to increase because of a condition where Allwyn will invest more money into it. There'll be more cash considerations if certain objectives are met over the next 3 years. If that happens, then the valuation would go up to $4.5 billion, I think, which is obviously pretty staggering numbers. I think especially for a lot of people such as myself on Europe and UK side of things who aren't entirely familiar with DFS, this is pretty crazy numbers for something that we're not overly familiar with. But I'm sure Jess will be able to give us some more insight into this later. But obviously DFS is a huge space in the US. It predated sports betting by many years, was basically kind of filled the gap that that wasn't filled by legal sports betting, I guess, in a way, in terms of the entertainment value for people until PASPA was repealed. So it's always had a solid foundation. And I think, from what I understand, at least anyway, PrizePicks and Underdog have been able to build themselves up quite a bit in this space in the aftermath of PASPA, because FanDuel and DraftKings obviously then, quite understandably, pivoted towards focusing much more heavily on their sports betting proposition as that rolled out across the many, many states that it's now active in. That's the reason why the valuation is so high, because of the value and popularity of DFS in the US, as well as, I guess, the potential crossover with sports betting. Obviously, got to say that within very strict regulatory terms, but there is that element there. And Allwyn are clearly, you mentioned, Charlie, the whole situation in California. I think Allwyn are clearly quite optimistic that the situation will continue being positive for the sector, and that the outlook around the events contracts and that the situation around those will stay positive as well.
We'll absolutely be digging into all of this. So perhaps, Ted, the intrigue, there was surprise and intrigue at this deal and the valuation from the European side. Jess, how about stateside? I mean, you've already said that basically everyone knew this was going to happen anyway, but when the reports first were mooted, what was the initial reaction?
The question I got from people the most was, to be honest, who's Allwyn? This is a brand that does not permeate over here. It is not one that we are familiar with. And I think you saw a lot of rumors that it was going to be Fanatics. You saw a lot of rumors that it was going to be one where there were more kind of apples to apples, synergies. So I think for this one, it's a bit surprising, the suitor. However, the more I read, the more it makes a little more sense to me. You saw that they spun up this digital Allwyn vertical and announced that just last month. They put the former Betfred US CEO, Krasimir Spacek, in charge of it, that you're seeing them kind of hinting, we're going to make the US a broader part of this. I know I'm hearing and reading a lot about like lottery synergies. I'll be honest, I'm kind of less sold on the idea that that's the goal of this.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there, Jess. Sorry to butt in, but I think this is very separate to lottery. I think this is more a case of Allwyn expanding their reach into more sports-orientated stuff, clearly, and they've made no secret for a while about their ambition to be a lottery-led entertainment brand, including sports. So I think this is the way for them to really amp up that entertainment side of things while retaining lotteries as their lead and main sort of revenue driving product across all other markets. Yeah,
let's make this clear actually for our listeners and maybe some of the US listeners who aren't as familiar with Allwyn. So Allwyn is headquartered in the Czech Republic, and they are a multinational lottery operator. They have lottery licenses in the UK, Austria, Czech Republic, Greece. I think they have Italy as well, and a couple of other European lotteries. They've also made a few other M&A moves into sports and gaming and that side of things as well. Ted, could you just give us a bit of an overview of some of the other M&A moves they've made in that space, as you sort of alluded to a moment ago?
Well, there's a few more historic ones. They're a shareholder in Kaizen Gaming, who were obviously the Greek firm who run Betano, which is a company which has been expanding globally quite a lot, building up a presence in Latin America and some other major markets. They are in the process of acquiring a stake in Novibet, another Greek gaming firm, which isn't completed yet, I should stress. I think that's still subject to some closing conditions, but I believe they expect that to be secured later on in the year. And they also own OPAP, which is again, another Greek firm, does sports betting, does gaming, and as you mentioned, Charlie has the lottery license there, although that is now going up to tender. It's OPAP and one other company, the competitors in that. But given that they've been running it for quite some time, they're probably in quite good stead in that contest. Yeah, and on the gaming side of things, they have Casinos Austria as well. So yeah, this isn't anything new, particularly for Allwyn to be spreading their wings outside of lottery, basically. And as I said earlier, I think their objective is to remain lottery led, but to be a more general entertainment brand with some different stakes in lots of different aspects of entertainment, particularly when it comes to like sports and gaming side of things.
Am I right that they are not a publicly traded company?
Correct. They had they attempted an IPO a few years ago, but it didn't reach completion, did it, Ted?
No, I don't. I'm honestly with you, Charlie, I don't actually remember what year exactly that was. I do remember covering it. It was before I moved on to payments, I think, so quite some time ago in my career.
I mean, Earnings and More pointed it out in their newsletter. PrizePicks is kind of a sexy DFS unicorn for these sorts of things, that I think a lot of the motivation behind this is, if you want to get a US IPO in particular, having a company like that in your portfolio makes it a lot easier than being like, check this Greek lottery deal we just re-upped, you know? So I think that's kind of a piece of the puzzle here too.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, Jess, Ted, we will come back after a short break and we'll scratch beneath the surface and really explore what's going on the PrizePicks and the US side of things. And we'll discuss whether this all adds up.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
All right, welcome back to iGaming Daily. Jess, before the break, you sort of said that Allwyn was targeting this deal because PrizePicks is a nice US-facing unicorn-type brand. Well, yeah, I mean, unicorn would be a fair description because the valuation is $2.5 billion. How would you assess that figure? Is that something that you would have felt is in a ballpark figure?
I mean, I didn't bat an eye at it when I saw it. I thought that it made sense. I know when we were talking about the California stuff, I don't think we brought it up on air, but off air, there were conversations of just like, you lose California potentially. You're somebody like a PrizePicks who's trying to negotiate this deal. Suddenly, like 25% of your TAM and 30% of your revenue is disappearing. How much does it ding that number? And it's interesting to me to see that I don't think it dinged it all that much. But as we're going to point out, Allwyn was certainly aware that this other kind of solution to the California problem was in the works. And you see these additional cash considerations, which I think are normal for a deal like this to get it up over $4 billion. But you kind of see kind of built in down the pipeline that if it does continue to work in California, they will benefit.
Mm-hmm. And Ted, you already outlined that you were a little bit shocked, perhaps intrigued by a $2.5 billion valuation.
Yeah, but more just because of the unfamiliarity that myself and others might have with PrizePicks in the DFS market. But no, I wouldn't quite say I was shocked. It's obviously the big figures. It's very staggering figures. But when you look at the size of the DFS scene in the US, it's and PrizePicks' role within that, it's not particularly surprising at all, I don't think. Obviously, like I was saying, it's just the thing that may impact this will be the future regulatory decisions around DFS and around the prediction markets and events contract stuff, which obviously we've found out PrizePicks is interested in.
Well, let's dig into this then. Obviously, we know that there are developments in California when it comes to DFS, Jess. So did this deal come at a good time for PrizePicks and Allwyn, or do we think that further movements could hamper things and we might look back at this in a different way in a few months?
I'm more concerned about the prediction market stuff than I am the DFS stuff. I have heard, like Rob Bonta, the Attorney General of California, has said he is kind of intent on enforcement action of this very negative opinion of DFS that wipes out not just 2.0s like Underdog and PrizePicks, but 1.0s like FanDuel and DraftKings as well. But if you can continue to offer what is effectively the same product there as a prediction market tool, that's great. I mean, to just give you some context too, Ted, you probably didn't see this or know, like in March of this year, Underdog was valued at $1.2 billion. So clearly it's not the worst timing if you can double your closest competitor's valuation. And what PrizePicks does have going for it that Underdog doesn't is Underdog has regulated sportsbooks aspirations. They are live in North Carolina. They're going to go live in Missouri. So regulators pushing back on prediction markets, they're in a bit of a worse spot than PrizePicks is. PrizePicks has never had regulated sportsbook aspirations, and I don't think that's changing. So moving forward with prediction markets, they're going to maybe receive some pushback on states where DFS licensing is required, but I'm guessing they'll do something similar to what Underdog is doing, where they just don't even offer it in those states.
Sure. And yeah, the other big news, and we should mention that, is that PrizePicks has got CFTC approval as a futures merchant. So it does seem like they are heading into this sector.
They are. To clarify what that is, a futures contract merchant is not the same as being Kalshi. Kalshi is a designated contract merchant, but what it does allow for is for PrizePicks to become something like Robinhood, where Robinhood offers all of the things that Kalshi offers within its app. So PrizePicks now has the ability to have a partnership like that and have these sports related contracts in app with what they're doing. Technically, Underdog is doing this too. They have found some sort of weird loophole where they're like a tech partner in several states. I don't fully understand it, but like the fact that PrizePicks is the first across the finish line for this, as we were talking about, you and Tom and I, it puts them in a really, really good position.
Mm-hmm. Well, that kind of clears things up, because if PrizePicks were just coming out and doing exactly what Kalshi are doing, then it would be slightly more questionable why Allwyn, this huge multinational regulated operator of, sports gaming, and who have national lottery contracts, would be getting into something that is so, I guess, questionable, and something that's going through the courts right now. Isn't that right, Ted?
Yeah, well, the way I look at it is that I think they've clearly been assessing their options of how to grow in the US and what's available to them. And this has probably presented itself as the best inroad, given that, let's say, if they just try to get involved in US sports betting, we've seen how many European operators have tried and failed to do that because of just the fact that FanDuel and DraftKings have such a hold on the market, with like a massive market dominance, huge market share. We've seen, Betfred try it, we've seen Kindred try it. Tipico obviously went there, and then their sportsbook was acquired. Really one of the only big European examples I can think of, like successful examples, would be Bet365. So Allwyn have probably taken a look at that and gone, well, this is clearly a tough thing to stand out in. Then on the lottery side of things, I think they currently have a contract with the Illinois lottery. But other than that, most lotteries are just obviously either run directly by the state themselves, or they've got very long-lasting, like decades-long external relationships that are deals that are probably not going to expire for, another 5, 10, sometimes even 20 years. So again, they're going to be looking at that and going, well, we don't want to be waiting around 2 decades to try and get involved in that. So the DFS scene, and then increasingly the prediction markets scene, which, the rise of Kalshi in particular has shown you how much public interest there is in that, has probably presented itself to them as being, this is the best way we can get involved in the US kind of entertainment predictions, sports entertainment side of things, as part of this ambition they've got of being a global lottery-led entertainment brand.
To chime in, for those who don't know as much about the US lottery, it's not like other countries where a lot of them are very involved in what the sportsbook offering is in the state. There are like less than 4 in which the lottery runs some sort of monopoly product that, to be honest, generally is perceived as a little bit garbage compared to like the open market of other places. And then you've got like North Carolina and Tennessee where they're the regulator, but it's just purely because there was nobody else available to do it because there's no other gaming infrastructure, right? So like there's just not sports opportunities in the lottery. I think really another thing to highlight is, if you haven't played on PrizePicks and Underdog, the tech is just substantially better than sports books. It's a fun interface. If you're saying, I need to decide Patrick Mahomes over under, his face pops up, you're just hitting a button. It's not like the ugly Excel spreadsheet grid, spread total money line, whatever color scheme operator you are in the United States. Like the tech is really good. It's in-house. It's very rapidly developed because you don't have to go through the regulatory hoops of every time you make a change, you got to go through the regulator. And that tech and the gamification element of things, I think really plays into that is the piece that maybe has the lottery appeal to it, is it feels less traditional sportsbook and more like fun games. Does that make sense at all?
Absolutely, it does. And that gamification and UI angle is something that's really dominating the conversation at the moment. I know in my day-to-day role, it's something that people are talking about a lot. There's plenty of content at SBC Summit as well about gamification and how, operators are looking to keep players on site and make things a bit more engaging for them. Just as we bring things to a little bit of a close now, we've touched on the huge opportunity that Allwyn has. If they can crack this and PrizePicks makes the most of this DFS and prediction markets opportunity. We've also highlighted some of the risks. So very briefly, I'd like each of you just to analyze, how is this going to go? Is this something we can label down as a bit of a calculated risk, or is Allwyn really, making a really sound decision for their US operations now?
On the DFS side of things, I think the time of 2 years ago where we're writing about, people getting kicked out of states, people coming back into states, I think we've kind of been through those hurdles. And now that PrizePicks is exclusively peer-to-peer and there's no against the house, which is generally where a lot of the language kind of tried to eliminate things, I think in the DFS space, they're pretty safe. California, obviously going to continue to be a puzzle piece. PrizePicks is based in Georgia. It's a very large company that employs a lot of people and has political pull. So Georgia, another key state, remains safe. Texas, you've got at least 2 years before they're even meeting in the legislature again. So you're good in Texas. And most of these other states are pretty settled. It is the prediction market piece that to me is the uncertainty. Are you going to jeopardize your DFS positions in regulated states? Is this going to be something that is long-term, something that is viable? Or rather, is it a 2 or 3 year fad that then gets killed in the courts? That I don't know. I think it's nonetheless a smart acquisition because, like I said, the tech is there. They know how to appeal to players. And even if the play is not sports betting related, you've still got like a major, incredibly recognizable company in the United States that's going to make a potential IPO for you all that more lucrative. So I mean, B+, A-.
Nice. Ted, how about yourself?
Yeah, I don't really think I have much to add on top of what Jess has said there. I think the acquisition makes a lot of sense for them kind of as a global brand and what they're trying to position themselves as something that's, as a company that obviously has lottery as a core focus of it, but is also heavily involved in lots of other aspects of entertainment and particularly sports-related, gaming-related entertainment. With that, it makes a lot of sense. I do think regarding the prediction markets element, I think that's, as Jess has already said, I think that's probably the side of this that we could say fits the category of being a calculated risk for the most part because of how a lot of regulatory uncertainty around that. It's all a bit of a regulatory mess at the moment, isn't it? With federal regulation, state regulation, litigations all over the place, but also something that is getting a lot of attention, a lot of public attention, and a lot of people are trying to get more and more involved in. But yeah, that's the risky element of it. But then, as Jess has said, the safe element of it is DFS is an established sector, an established market product, whatever you want to call it, in the US for some time, predating the obviously nationwide betting market as well. It's something that's very popular with a lot of Americans. It's something that is, it's not strictly betting, so it's got like that gamification element to it of sort of a bit more mass market, I guess. And it's one that will continue to be there. So I think, as Jess has said, it's a solid market for them to get involved in there. And then maybe more importantly, it's a good way for them to get their foot in the door into the US, set up the stage for a potential IPO. And I think they've recognised that this is a good way for them to get in there when sports betting's, as I've said earlier, incredibly competitive, almost like duopoly level competitive. And lotteries is very closed off with the various state contracts and the way it's run in the US being very different to Europe.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Ted and Jess, for all of your insights and opinions here. And if our listeners want to get the lowdown on all of these stories, then we'll throw some links from both SBC News and SBC Americas into the show notes. But for now, thank you very much for listening to iGaming Daily, and tune in tomorrow for all the latest global gambling news.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News network, or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.